Do you remember when a new JavaScript framework would be released every week? Well, the same thing is happening again, but with agent harnesses. And this time, the guys that usually throw money around have actually picked up a keyboard and wrote some code. Well, actually, Claude probably did it. But startup accelerator Y Combinator have released their own agent harness, QM, and they call it a multiplayer agent harness for work in Slack and on the web. And it does have some interesting features, plus it's specifically designed for startups. So if you run a company that makes zero profit, then this may be the tool for you. So what actually is QM? If you've read through the GitHub repo, you've probably come away with more questions than answers because it does a pretty terrible job of explaining itself. The word harness makes it sound like another Claude Code, something you install on your laptop and run in your terminal. It's actually a full stack web application that companies deploy onto their own infrastructure, and everyone in the org gets their own isolated workspace on it. Underneath that, you've got a headless backend running the agent loops and Postgres holding the session history. So none of it lives on your machine. It plugs into Slack so people can use it wherever they already work, or you can drive it directly from the web UI. So if you want to set it up once and forget about it, you can do that. And if you want to stay up to date with the latest tools, then subscribe to BetterStack. So why would you even use this? Well, let's break it down. QM runs in the cloud, not on your machine. That means the agent and the tool calls all happen off device, and you can access it on any device that connects to the web. And every workspace gets its own container with its own storage attached. So anything the agent installs stays installed. Get it to set up a Python environment on Monday and it's still there on Friday, along with the files and anything it cloned. So each workspace is a real machine that keeps its own state. Next up is shared context. You can create a project and add team members so you can share memory, files, apps, and connectors between the organization. That means you can set things up once and everyone benefits. By default, everyone gets a personal space, which is effectively a project set to private. So you can choose to set up only things you have access to and safely configure things like credentials without sharing them. However, if you do want multiple team members to have access to the same tools, files, or credentials, that is also possible. The web UI actually does a terrible job of telling you which context you're in, with basically nothing on screen letting you know where you're configuring things against. You can see here, I click my shared project, and in files, I get a small pill to tell me I'm uploading to that project, but in other tabs, I see no indicator at all. I would expect to see a persistent UI element to tell me which context I'm in, but I'm sure that can be added soon. The next benefit is harnesses. If you do really like the way a certain harness works, like Claude Code, for example, you can configure that to run inside QM. You can see here the default harness is Pi, but I can switch to Claude and I'll be running the exact same Claude Code harness I'm used to, but in a cloud environment. Getting Claude Code into that list actually took a little bit of digging, and admin decides which harnesses everyone is allowed to pick. And out of the box, you only get the one your deployment booted with. So my dropdown started with just Pi and nothing else. There's no control for it anywhere in the admin panel, so I had to set it with an API call. That's a put at the harnesses endpoint with the IDs of the two harnesses I want, and after refresh, they both show up. The next benefit is that it has a really tiny tool surface. Now, this is something that I really liked. The agent only gets 7 tools: execute, read, write, publish, memory, history, and background. Everything else it does is just a shell command inside its own sandbox. So instead of wiring up a pile of MCP servers, hoping the model picks the right one, you can just hand it a machine and let it work the way you would. It's the same approach that Claude Code takes, and it's nice to see that this is built at the core of the design. So how do you let an agent loose on company data without it going badly wrong? There's an org-wide setting for that with 3 levels. On strict, just about every tool call pauses and waits for a human to approve it. Auto is the default, and it runs a classifier over external data and tool results before they reach the model. And on dangerous, there's no screening and nothing pauses. A team can tighten that for their own scope, but they can't loosen it past what the org picked. There's also a command policy that applies whatever posture you're on, so things like recursive deletes and destructive SQL get blocked even on dangerous mode. You'd want something like that before putting an agent in front of the whole company, and it's not something you get when everyone runs their own agents locally. Overall, I can see QM being a powerful tool for teams, having shared access to company documentation, because as an admin, you can configure fine-grained access to external tools through credentials, choose to include files or memory on how to run various processes. You can even create shared skills that anyone in your project can access. So rather than isolated setups like we have today with our CLI tools, this allows organizations to benefit from everyone's hard work. Personally, I think it's worth a look. It's already gained 13,000 stars on GitHub, but I would say there's still much to be done about the UI and UX. To be fair to the developers, the project is only 2 weeks old, so it literally is not mature. However, the potential here is huge. It's open source and you can control and tweak absolutely everything, including changing the source code if needed. So you can check it out on the GitHub repo linked in the description. And if you enjoyed that, don't forget to subscribe to BetterStack, and I'll see you in the next one.